Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Vidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhutaguhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Very good. Welcome back. We continue our study of this brilliant text of Sri Shankaracharya, Upadesha Sahasri. And since it is Sahasri, 1,000 teachings, we're going to be studying this for quite a while. Fortunately, that's to our benefit, by the way. You don't get extra points for finishing a text, right? This isn't like a college class or anything. So it's wonderful that we can continue this study for some time. We're in the midst of chapter 11, which has this complicated title, Ikshitratva Prakaranam. Ikshitratva means the state of being an observer. And this is a very central teaching methodology in Advaita Vedanta. Teaching methodology we call prakriya, and as you know, Vedanta is an assemblage of prakriyas, teaching methodologies. And we employ those methodologies then to guide a process of self-inquiry. And sometimes we kind of lose sight of the basic principle. The basic practice in Vedanta is in fact self-inquiry, atma-vichara. But the issue is, how is that self-inquiry guided? And it's guided through these various prakriyas. One of the most important prakriyas in Advaita Vedanta is called the avastha-traya prakriya. Avastha-traya, you may know as being the three states of experience: waking, dream, and deep sleep, jagrat, swapna, and sushupti. And the point of that methodology is to understand yourself as the observer of this constant change, of these constant flow of these three states of experience. You are the observer of whatever happens in the waking state. You are the observer of whatever happens in the dream state. You are the observer of the absence of anything in deep sleep. And this is a fundamental teaching which Shankara is going to present here in an unusual way. I think a delightful way. Usually we'll go through all three of the states of experience. He focuses here in the next 4 verses that we're going to see this morning. He focuses on swapna avastha, the dream state. And he, in a span of just 4 verses, he analyzes various aspects of your experience of dream to show how you are the unchanging observer of the changing conditions of your mind. This is the fundamental principle that, in fact, much of what we've seen already is dedicated to that very important discovery that is to be made. And that is, you as pure consciousness, sat-chit-ananda atma, you are the unchanging observer of all the changing mental events in your mind. That's where we begin. And to help us understand that, Shankara enters into this analysis of experience in the dream state. One final comment before we plunge in, and that is, we've said so many times that the basis of all Vedantic teachings is Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. Shruti, scriptural revelation; Yukti, reasoning; and Anubhava, experience. Here we could say that the text is analyzing Anubhava, analyzing experience, analyzing ordinary experience. You don't need an extraordinary experience to become enlightened. You do have to understand the true nature of your experience right now. So suppose we analyze that experience, Anubhava, using Shruti, scriptural revelation, and Yukti, these teachings, reasoning. That's a good way of understanding, in a very general sense, how Vedanta works, so to speak. Vedanta is an analysis. This is one way of describing Vedanta, as an analysis of your ordinary experiences to reveal something that is extraordinary, that's present in your ordinary experience. Of course, what is extraordinary is your true nature as sat-chit-ananda, atma, and your ordinary experience then is analyzed with the help of Shruti, scriptural revelation, and Yukti, reasoning, in the form of these teachings. We'll see that. So in today's class, the analysis of experience is going to be focused on your experience of dreams. So let's see that. Okay. And there's a typo in the very first line. Ya maha rajana, not rajana, rajana. Ya maha rajana dhyastha, ya maha rajana dhyastha, vasana swapna darshivihi, vasana swapna darshivihi. Anubhuyanta he veha, anubhuyanta he veha, tatohanya kevalo drashihi, tatohanya kevalo drashihi. Start in the second line. Swapnadarshibihi, by those who observe dreams. All of us. By the observer of dreamers. What do they observe? They observe vasana. Vasana has several meanings. Here, it's mental impressions left over in your mind. Left over from what? Look at the third line. Left over from anubhuyante eva iha. So iha here in the waking state, that which was anubhuyante, that which was experienced in the waking state, leaves a vasana, a mental impression, and it's those mental impressions you experience in a dream. If you see an elephant in the waking state, you can then, that experience of the elephant leaves a vasana, leaves an impression, and that impression can arise then in a form of experience during a dream. And then here Shankara makes reference to, we said Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava. So Anubhava is your dream experience. Yukti is all of these teachings, and Shankara carefully roots all of this in scripture. He says, those vasanas are maharajanadhyaha taha. Sanskrit is a little clumsy here. So yaha taha. Those vasanas are maharajanadi. If we take off the declensional ending. Maharajana is an unusual word. It comes from probably Maharanjana, probably. Ranjana is coloring. So that which is maha, greatly coloring, and greatly coloring in ancient times often referred to turmeric, which was used to dye cloth yellow. Perhaps it still is. So Maharajana then has the meaning of turmeric, and Maharajana, for Sanskrit students, that's a tadhita, is that which has been colored by turmeric. So clothes that are dyed yellow is what that funny expression means. And this is used as a metaphor for dreams. And the way it works is you have cloth, you dip it in this, dye, and that is the equivalent to waking state experience. Dipping cloth in the dye represents waking state experience. Then you take the cloth out and dry it, and that color remains. And the color that remains then represents the carryover of waking state experiences into the dream state. So the coloring represents the vasana, the impressions left over from the waking state. But this is all pretty ordinary. What is the point that Shankara wants to make here? He says, tataha, in the last line, for this reason, tataha anyaha kevalo drishihi. Tataha anyaha, anya, other than tataha, other than that. Than that what? Means your experiences in dream and waking. I'll show this in just a moment. Other than, separate from your experience is the drishi, the observer, the sakshi, the awareful witness, the consciousness which is your true nature, which is kevalaha, which is absolutely independent. And here we need to fill in some blanks here. Shankara, in this text, he's often quite terse, and he kind of presumes you're going to figure out what he is conveying in these very few words. Here's the point. When you dream, you are the observer of the dream, right? Not unlike being the observer of something you watch on a computer screen. Whatever happens in your mind is observed by you, the dreamer. Actually, observed by you, let me not say dreamer, observer. Drishi is the word he used. Drishi literally means seer, but here we're not talking about sight with our eyes. We're talking about being awareful. We're talking about observation. So you are the observer of whatever happens in your dream state, all your dreams. Tell me, how different is that from what's happening right now? Right now, you are the observer of what? In a dream, you observe everything happening in your mind. Right now, you observe everything happening in your mind identically because you don't, the me that you see, we've talked about this several times, you see me, but the me that you see, pardon the language, is in your mind. You know how sight works? Light bounces off of me, the reflected light strikes your eyes, the lenses focus that light on the retina, and I like this image. On the back of your two retinas, on the back of your two eyeballs, are two 1/4-inch tall, upside down Swami Taratmanandas. Right? That's how it works. And then optic nerve and the complication of the brain, and almost miraculously you see me. But the me that you see And somehow that language sounds so funny. The me that you see is not the me out here on the chair. The me that you see in the most direct way is the one that has been recreated in your mind. So everything you see, hear, taste, smell, or touch is known to you only when it reaches your mind. So right now in the waking state, the only thing, and I'm always careful when I use the word only, the only thing you directly experience is the contents of your mind. In the waking state and dream state, identically. The world around you is known only indirectly by means of your five senses. What is directly known to you is the contents of your mind. So here Shankara and in other texts we see the same approach of blurring the boundary between dream and waking. And we're going to see other reasons for blurring the boundary. And will come in the coming verses. So this verse makes a particular point, and that is, just as you are the observer of whatever is happening in your mind during a dream, in the same way, you are the observer of whatever is happening in your mind in the waking state identically. At that level, from the standpoint of being the observer, there's absolutely no difference between waking and dream. Now, in the coming verses, Shankara is going to make some other points about that dream state. Koshariva vinishkrishtaha, koshariva vinishkrishtaha, karya karana varjitaha, karya karana varjitaha, yatha sir drishyate swapne, yatha sir drishyate swapne, tadvad bodha swayam prabha, tadvad bodha swayam bhava, swayam prabha. Okay, this verse, by the way, is just messy because it's all chopped up and mixed up. You know that in order to write in these verses, you have to follow a certain pattern of short and long syllables, only 8 syllables in a quarter, and these constraints often cause authors to kind of reorganize things, which makes it a little confusing. Start in the 3rd line. Yata asihi. Some of you know that asi means sword. Yata asihi. So the metaphor, just like a sword, go up to the top line. Koshat eva vinishkrishtaha. Eva, like an asi, like a sword, is koshat. Kosha is covering. A sword is covered in its sheath. So just like a asi, a sword, koshat, from its sheath, is nishkrishtaha, withdrawn. Just like a sword is withdrawn from the sheath. Now, the metaphor is this. When the sword is inside the sheath, you don't see it. It's covered by the sheath. Covering, kosha. Have you remember a study of pancha kosha? So kosha is sheath. So here, the sword is covered by a sheath, and in a similar way, in a metaphoric way, your true nature is covered by 5 sheaths. I don't think we'll go through that teaching because I think most of you are familiar with it, and it's not central to our discussion. Well, maybe. Anyway, let me decide as we go on. Actually, I do want to do it. So this idea of the covering of koshas is something that is really misunderstood. Let's see the whole verse, and then I want to talk further about this idea of atma being covered by koshas. So just as an asi, a sword, is koshat from the sheath, it is nishkrishtaha, it is removed. That sheath is a covering, and the metaphor continues. In the same way, we have to, last line, tadvat, in the same way, swapne, you see how you have to jump, you have to be agile, jump around in these verses. Tadvat, in the same way, swapne, in a dream, bodha, the knower. The knower, meaning like the word drishi was used in the prior verse. Here the word bodha is used. Both words mean identically consciousness, your essential nature, as sat-chit-ananda, atma, the consciousness that reveals the activities of your mind. That consciousness which is swayam prabha, excuse me, Swayam Prabha, self-shining, self-revealed. You use consciousness to know what's happening in your mind. If you ask, how do I know consciousness? It's kind of a funny question, right? How do I know I'm conscious? Does that question make sense to you? Would you ask that question? Swamiji, am I conscious? So it is self-evident, self-apparent that you are a conscious being. You don't need anyone to tell you. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to discover anything. You are, by nature, self-evidently, you are consciousness. That's what Swayam Prabha here means. And so, swapne, in a dream, this consciousness, bodha, which is swayam prabha, self-revealing, self-effulgent, it is, now the line was skipped over, the consciousness is karya, karana, varjitaha. And even the commentator didn't seem to do a very good job explaining this. I'm pretty sure what Shankara had in mind here. Karya and karana often mean cause and effect, but cause and effect isn't very meaningful here. So, that happens to be what the commentator gives as the meaning, but I would suggest a different meaning, which is, I think, far more obvious. Karya is often used to refer to your body. Karya is an effect and a consequence of getting born, a consequence of karma. So body is frequently referred to as karya, and karana, cause. What is the cause for your body? Elements. So karya, the body, and the karana, the elements of which the body is comprised. The bodha consciousness is varjitaha, freed from the body and the elements of which is comprised, swapne, in the state of dream. Let me put that all together for you. It's not as complicated as it seems. So just as a sword is removed from its sheath, and you see the sword as it is, in the same way, the bodha, the knower, consciousness, is covered by a different sheath. In this case, the sheath is the physical body. In fact, of the 5 sheaths, this one is called annamaya kosha, the sheath made of food, all right? So just as the sword is withdrawn from the sheath, consciousness is withdrawn from this sheath, the physical body, when swapne, during a dream. During a dream, you are freed from your physical body. That's an interesting observation. In your dream state, you exist completely independently of your physical body. You're freed from your body. And I read someplace where people who are disabled, maybe they can't walk, they dream of themselves walking and running. So in a dream, they are freed from their bodies and the disabilities of their bodies. So here, the point, though, is a more Vedantic point, and that is to see the sword as it is. It needs to be removed from its sheath to understand consciousness as it is. It needs to be freed from the constraints of the physical body, freed from the sheath of the body. And I really have to go further here because this topic is much misunderstood. The whole idea of kosha is misunderstood, and that's what this whole topic is. So now, if you take the metaphor too literally, look at the consequence. You won't see the sword unless you remove it from the sheath. You won't discover sat-chit-ananda atma until you get rid of your physical body. That's not a very helpful interpretation. So let's understand this idea of sheath. Kosha is the Sanskrit word. I think almost all of you have been exposed to this teaching of the 5 koshas. I'd like to review it very briefly with you. I hadn't planned on doing it, but it is so important. It's worth this effort. It's a very central teaching of Vedanta and a very misunderstood teaching of Vedanta. Let me go to the board, because this topic really needs that kind of, oops, wrong one. I have to push the right button here, this button. All right. Okay, I'm going to start off with what I'm going to call an infamous diagram. All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so kosha means sheath or covering, and it is said in many Vedanta texts that Atma is covered, so to speak, by 5 sheaths. Let me just see where I can write and stay on the board, maybe here. Okay, so the outermost sheath is called Annamaya. Maya means made of, anna, food. Whenever I say that, I can only remember my guru, who, in spite of being such a profound teacher of Vedanta, he liked to make silly jokes. And one of his favorite ones is he said, "This is made of donuts." Why? I have no idea where that came from. This is, especially this one, is made of donuts, according to him. So Annamaya kosha is the outermost. Then Pranamaya. These are koshas. Am I off? Let me just see. Okay, up on top it doesn't show. Okay, so all of these are koshas. So pranamaya, the sheath made of prana, life force. And it more than just your capacity for breathing, but circulation, digestion, all of these factors that enliven your physical body, make up the pranamaya kosha. Then comes, next is the manomaya. The word manas, when it enters into a compound, becomes mano sometimes. Manas, means mind. Manomaya kosha is the kosha in the form of your mind. Next is Vijnanamaya. Vijnana here refers to your buddhi, your intellect. We always differentiate between manas, mind, and intellect, buddhi. So we see that same division here between the manomaya kosha and the vijnanamaya kosha. Manomaya kosha, mind. Vijnanamaya kosha, buddhi. That's all those terms mean. And then finally, the not most misunderstood, but definitely misunderstood, Anandamaya kosha. And then they translate it as bliss sheath. And then you read that, what in the world are they talking about? Bliss sheath. So let's work on that first, and then I want to talk about why this is infamous, this diagram. It's used by everyone. It is wrong. Absolutely wrong. I'll show you how in just a moment. First of all, how can Ananda be a sheath, bliss sheath? Here we have to look at this diagram in terms of the three states of experience. Happens to be part of our topic today. In the waking state, it is said that all of this is present. All five sheaths are present in your experience in the waking state. When you dream, however, as we just discussed, what goes away? Right? Physical body. So in the dream state, you can only experience 4 of the 5 sheaths. Got it? In the waking state, you experience all 5. In the dream state, you experience these 4 of the 5 states. And this will help you understand Anandamaya kosha, because what happens in deep sleep? Dreamless sleep, sushupti avastha. In deep sleep, you're not aware of prana. In your dream, you're alive. In a dream, you can be strong or weak. So definitely in a dream, you're aware of pranamaya kosha. In a dream, you're aware of whatever's happening in your mind. In a dream, you're aware of whatever's happening in your intellect. In deep sleep, there's no awareness of prana. In deep sleep, there's no awareness of mind. In deep sleep, there's no awareness of buddhi, intellect. In deep sleep, the only kosha that remains is ananda. What do you experience in deep sleep? And this is something you may not have thought about. Is deep sleep a condition of utter emptiness, void, utter desolation, non-existence? Is that your experience of deep sleep? Or is your experience of deep sleep blissful? Isn't that interesting? You would think that we would be afraid to sleep because you see, in a manner of speaking, you cease, let me rephrase that. If deep sleep were a state of non-existence, we would all be afraid to go to bed at night. Because who wants to blink out of existence? It's like a mini death. But that's not at all our experience of deep sleep. First of all, we don't cease to exist in deep sleep. We very much exist in deep sleep. As awareful beings, you continue just as you are aware of what's happening in the waking state, just as you are aware of what's happening during your dreams. In the same way, you are aware of the absence of the body, prana, mind, and intellect in deep sleep. All that remains is an experience of bliss. Anandamaya kosha. So now you understand why it's called the bliss sheath. It's in terms of experience. In deep sleep, you experience yourself in a blissful condition. For that reason, this is called Anandamaya kosha, and often translated as bliss sheath. Okay, that part is understood. Now, next part is, why is this diagram incorrect? It's incorrect because that little dot, they say, represents atma, which is covered by the 5 sheaths. Now, here's the problem. Atma has no edge, has no boundary. As we've discussed here in so many classes, Atma is not stuck inside your body, not stuck inside your head. Atma is dimensionless, boundaryless. Therefore, it is all-pervasive. And as we've discussed so many times, there is one all-pervasive consciousness which is reflected or manifest in every living being. We've seen that teaching again and again. One all-pervasive consciousness manifest in your mind and my mind and the mind of every living being. So since that consciousness is all-pervasive, how can you draw this little dot in the middle of this diagram? It's not a little dot. Further, if Atma is all-pervasive, how do you cover it? Do you see the problems with this topic? Very much misunderstood. And then that leads to the notion that, in order to discover the Atma hidden within, we have to peel off these koshas like peeling an onion. Well, guess what? I haven't peeled an onion maybe since I was a child. I don't even remember. But if you go on peeling layer after layer after layer of an onion, what's left? Right? Nothing. The onion is nothing but layers. So that shows that this idea of peeling off these outer layers to discover Atma hiding inside, it's silliness. It's a big misunderstanding and a common misunderstanding. You've seen this diagram, the bullseye diagram. Okay, how can we correct this diagram and understand these koshas properly? First thing we can do is properly identify Atma. Atma is not this little dot inside. Where is Atma, all-pervasive Atma, in this diagram? Maybe you can answer correctly. Atma is represented by the whiteboard, right? Not that little dot. Atma is a whiteboard. Now we have the last problem we have to solve here, is what do you mean by covering or sheath? And the word kosha is a little bit problematic. In Sanskrit commentaries, they actually deal with this, with the problematic nature. Though in Sanskrit commentaries, they'll constantly point out koshavat eva acharakatvat. They say it covers as though a sheath, which means it's not a sheath. The moment they say Eva, they're saying that this idea of sheath is a metaphor. Don't take it literally. This is what the commentators always say on texts that go through this. So then how shall we understand these 5 koshas properly? And I'll give you a completely different interpretation. This was brilliantly taught by my guru, and he said, these 5 sheaths cannot cover Atma, for all the reasons we've just said. He said that these 5 koshas are 5 locus is a Latin word, and I think the plural is loci. Okay? So to say locuses is actually incorrect. So multiple locus is loci. The loci of identification, this is how he defined these koshas, and let me explain what I mean. In the waking state, who are you? You identify yourself with your body. You identify yourself with your prana. If I ask you, are you male or female? That refers to identification with your physical body. When I ask you, are you healthy or sick? Identification with your pranamaya kosha. When I ask you, are you agitated? Are you happy? Are you sad? Identification with manomaya kosha. When I ask you, did you understand what I just said? Identification with vijnanamaya kosha. When I ask you, are you blissful in deep sleep? Identification with anandamaya kosha. Notice in each case, I am male or female. That means you are identifying yourself with the annamaya kosha. So annamaya kosha is less a covering and better understood as a locus of identification. You identify with the physical body. You identify with prana. When I say, are you feeling okay? Do you say, I'm okay, but my body isn't doing so well? You probably don't reply like that because you're identified with the pranamaya kosha. No, I'm okay, but there is tiredness present. Pranamaya kosha. If I ask you, are you agitated? You say, I'm not agitated, my mind is. Huh? If you really got these teachings, that's exactly what you would say. Because that's the truth of the matter. You are the unchanging conscious observer of your physical body. You are the unchanging conscious observer of the condition of your prana. You are the unchanging conscious observer of the condition of your mind and intellect. You are the unchanging conscious observer of bliss and deep sleep. So if I ask you, are you tired today? You say, I'm not tired, but my mind is. Is the truth of the matter. I'm not suggesting you should adopt that language. It would be very peculiar when you're talking with others. But you get my point. We constantly identify, due to ignorance of your true nature as all-pervasive consciousness, and due to the habitual nature of our minds. And this is another point. Even when you've understood, I am all-pervasive consciousness, then even then, this identification is deeply ingrained in our minds. It is habitual. Habitual identification with our bodies and minds is one of the biggest obstacles in this atma-vichara, in this process of gaining enlightenment through the teachings of Vedanta. So let's finish this topic and come back to our text. So here we see that each of these koshas is less a covering, because Atma can't be covered, but they are certainly loci of identification. You identify yourself as male or female, identifying with the physical body. You say, I am tired, or I am sick, identification with pranamaya kosha. You say, I am agitated, I am happy, sad, identification with manomaya kosha. You say, I don't understand. You don't say, you raise your hand, Swamiji, my intellect didn't understand what you just said. You say, I don't understand. Identification. And in deep sleep, you don't say, last night I was the unchanging conscious observer of the condition of bliss. That's a fact, but you may not say it. You say, I was blissful. Identification. Oops. Here, identification. So here we have a proper understanding of kosha, and especially of this pancha kosha, these 5 sheaths. By the way, if you're interested, years ago I did a video on pancha kosha, and let me push the right button here. Yes. And the title of the video was Pancha Kosha, 5 sheaths that cannot cover Atma. So if you're interested, you can go find that video and watch it. So that's all here with reference to kosha, koshavat. Okay. Let's see one more verse. Apeshat pratibuddhasya, apeshat pratibuddhasya, Nyasya swabhavikam param, nyasya swabhavikam param, uktam netyadi vakyena, uktam netyadi vakyena, kalpitasyapa netrana. Apeshat is a really peculiar word. If you look it up, I think it only occurs in one place in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And I mentioned before that in this chapter, there are several references to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, making us wonder if Shankara wasn't studying or teaching that Upanishad at the time that he was composing this chapter. We don't know, possible. So anyway, this expression comes from the, I think, the second part of the Brihadaranyaka. So apeshat is apeshanam is this obscure word meaning pushed. And pratibuddhasya in the Upanishad, there's a story about someone who was sleeping and he was awake. How do you awaken a sleeping person? Right? Here we'll use the word push. So you push on them. So apeshat, due to being pushed, pratibuddhasya, for a person who is awakened. But by the way, Buddha, many of you know the literal meaning. Buddha has several meanings, but one meaning is to be awake. So pratibuddhasya, for one who has been awakened. How? By being pushed. And this is being given here as a metaphor. So for one who has been awakened from sleep, that's our topic, right? Dream. So awakened from a dream by being pushed. And what happens for that person? Swabhavikam padam. That person regains his or her padam state, which is swabhavikam, natural, in this case, waking state. When you are pushed and awakened from a dream, you then return to your normal state. The significance here is a moment before you were awakened, you thought the dream world was real. A moment after you're awakened, you know that the dream world was unreal. A moment before, the elephant was real. A moment later, the elephant is unreal. Why? Because you were awakened by a push. Awakened by a push. Okay, so, and now comes a metaphor. In the same way, nyasya, here we could take it as an enlightened person, is apeshat, a person becomes enlightened. By the way, pratibuddha, if you can wake up out of a dream, the metaphor here is you can wake up out of the dream of ignorance. This is a metaphor. Ignorance is not a dream. But there's a parallel here. And the parallel is, as I said, for the dream, a moment before you were awakened, the elephant was real. A moment after, the elephant is unreal. How about waking up out of the dream of ignorance? A moment before, all of this was real. A moment after enlightenment, it's not real. See that? You wake up from a dream, the elephant that seemed real is known to be unreal. You wake up out of the dream of ignorance, the world that seemed so real is known to be unreal. And here it's important to correct this language, because this language suggests that the world is a dream. The world is not a dream. The world is as real as it seems. The point here is that the world is not as real as you are. Remember our definition of real? Trikala avaditam. Without being technical, how would it just say, whatever persists in existence is real. So we'll say that which has more persistence is more real. That which has less persistence is less real. This is a very Vedantic and a little bit logical, but you understand it. That which has more persistence is more real. That which has less persistence is less real. How persistent is a dream? They come and go. Less real. The waking, the dreamer, are more persistent than the dream. The dreamer is more persistent than the dream, which means the dreamer is more real than the dream, or to put it the other way around. The dream world is less real than a dreamer. You with me? Dream world is less real than a dreamer because it is less persistent. It comes and goes. Watch this. How persistent is the world? Well, according to science, the world didn't exist 15 billion years ago. So that means it's not absolutely persistent. If it's not absolutely persistent, it's not absolutely real. And what happens with the help of these teachings is you wake up out of the dream of ignorance, and the world which had seemed so real is now known to be less real than you. And I think that expression, less real, is important. Vedanta does not say the world is a dream. And when Vedanta says Jagat Mithya, the famous statement, the world is Mithya, Mithya does not mean unreal. Mithya means that which is not independently real. So many of you know that expression, Jagan Mithya, the world is Mithya. But Mithya is the state of existence of this pot. Would you say that the pot is unreal? You won't say the pot is unreal. But pot is made of clay. In fact, pot is nothing but clay. So we can say from this kind of logical standpoint, clay is more real than the pot because clay exists independently of the pot. Pot exists dependent on clay. In that sense, pot has dependent existence, whereas clay has independent existence. In the same way, the world has dependent existence, whereas Brahman, the reality of all, has independent existence. So enlightenment means waking up to the fact that the world is not absolutely real. And in particular, the world is less real than you. And this is that sounds kind of philosophical or logical, but it has such an important consequence. If the world is less real than you, how can it threaten you? When you wake up, you don't have to be afraid of being trampled by that dream elephant. In your dream, that elephant was ready to trample you. You were afraid. When you wake up, you know that the dream elephant can't threaten you. It's less real than you. So, applying that now to the world, everything in the world is less real than your true nature as sat-chit-ananda Atma, which means a mugger with a knife can absolutely injure your body. I'm not saying you should ignore these physical threats, and they're as real as they are. So your body can be injured, your mind can be injured, your emotions can be injured. All of that is true. Nothing can injure, nothing can threaten your true nature as consciousness. Consciousness being unaffected by anything and everything, consciousness being unchanging. Let's finish this verse. So, a person awoken from a dream knows that nothing in a dream can threaten them. A person awoken from this world we experience, that person gains swabhavikam padam, their true state, their true nature as sat-chit-ananda Atma. And how does that happen? And here's Shankara uses, I think it's a kind of a clever metaphor. So you push a person to wake them up from a dream. How do you push a person to wake them up out of the dream of ignorance? According to Shankara, it is uktam, what has to be said is na iti adi vakyena. They are woken up by the vakya, by the statement, or statements like neti, neti, na iti, not this, this is not real, that is not real, this is not real. So just as you wake someone up from a dream by pushing them, you wake someone up from the dream of ignorance. How? Neti, neti. This world is not as real as it seems. And that neti, neti, the statement, the teaching neti, neti, is kalpitasya apanetra. The statement neti, neti is apanetra. Shankara likes this complicated Sanskrit. It is a remover. A remover of what? Kalpita, what is imagined, what is projected. So in the dream, you project the elephant. You are threatened by the elephant until you wake up. In the waking state, you project the reality of the world. And if the world is as real as you are, watch out. That world can threaten you. But through neti, the reality of the world is negated. Your attribution of reality to the world is negated. The world doesn't, when you get enlightened, the world doesn't change. What changes is your false belief that the world is as real as your consciousness. That false belief is removed. That false belief causes suffering. The cause for suffering is removed by neti. Okay, this is a good place to conclude our class today. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om tat sat.